The crack wasn't a sudden explosion, it was the sound of my mother-in-law, Patricia, whispering venom into her phone in the guest room, a room she insisted on staying in whenever Leo was around. Leo, my wife Clara's nephew who had lived with us for the last 10 years since his supposed mother, Clara's non-existent sister, had fallen apart. It was late, past midnight, and I was retrieving a book when I heard Patricia's voice, sharp and frantic, pierce the silence. "You need to increase the transfer. Julian is asking questions about the tuition. I told you, if he finds out where the money is really going, everything collapses." She paused, listening to the terrified voice on the other end, which I immediately recognized as Clara's. "Julian is me." I froze in the hallway, the blood draining from my face. Tuition? Leo's private school fees were paid directly by us, by me, every month. There was no other tuition. The realization hit me with the physical force of a punch. The decades of unquestioning trust one had placed in my wife, the woman who shared my bed and my life, was built on a lie so elaborate, even her own mother was involved in the upkeep. I backed away silently, my heart hammering against my ribs, not daring to confront them yet. I needed evidence. I needed to understand what everything collapses truly meant, and why Patricia was the one controlling the financial flow for a boy who was supposed to be the tragic byproduct of a distant relative's bad luck. That night, I didn't sleep. I just stared at the ceiling, replaying every moment of the last decade, searching for the cracks I had ignored, the silent warning signs hidden beneath the guise of familial charity. The official story of Leo was a masterwork of collaborative fiction. Clara had introduced him to me 10 years ago when he was just 5, teary-eyed and quiet. She explained that her sister, Sarah, who lived abroad, conveniently, and whom I had met only once years prior, had suffered a complete mental break, and Leo needed stability. Being childless ourselves, I embraced the role of uncle and surrogate father instantly. I saw it as a wonderful opportunity to build the family we longed for. Clara's devotion to Leo was fierce, bordering on obsessive, which I always chalked up to deep familial empathy. Now, standing in the cold light of this new suspicion, her devotion felt less like love and more like desperate ownership. Why was Patricia so involved in the finances if Leo's needs were handled by me? The amount Patricia mentioned, the increase, was substantial. It was more than supplementary, it sounded like the main source of support for someone else. I began reviewing our joint accounts, focusing specifically on the school fees and the small, regular house maintenance checks Clara wrote to her mother. The numbers didn't reconcile. Every time I paid Leo's expensive private school tuition, Clara would write a corresponding check to Patricia, slightly less than the tuition amount, but significant. It was a cycle of payment and reimbursement, a laundered paper trail designed to appear innocuous. I realized the sister Sarah was a ghost, a convenient shield crafted to explain away a decade of financial maneuvers and a child who didn't belong to her. The financial investigation became my only focus, my secret obsession. I started digging deeper into Patricia's bank records. She was a meticulous woman, but even the best liars leave fingerprints. I accessed the statements through an old joint investment account she had forgotten I still had access to. The transactions were startling. Patricia wasn't just reimbursing Clara, she was making massive, quarterly payments to a non-profit foundation based 2 states away. The amounts were rounded, precise, and alarmingly regular, beginning exactly 10 years and 3 months ago, just after Leo arrived. I cross-referenced the foundation. It wasn't a charity, it was a holding company for high-net-worth individuals, often used to obscure assets or funnel payments discreetly. The funds weren't going to a charity, they were going through one. I realized Patricia was not merely covering Leo's tuition, she was funding an entire shadow life, perhaps another child, or maybe she was paying off someone to maintain the silence around Leo's true parentage. The urgency in Patricia's voice that night echoed back. She wasn't protecting her wealth, she was protecting Clara's secret, and using her resources to manage the fallout of something catastrophic that happened a decade ago. I needed to know the identity of the recipient of those large quarterly sums. I felt physically sick, realizing the depth of the deception involved 3 people I trusted implicitly, all working in concert against me. I decided to confront Patricia indirectly first. I arranged a casual lunch, framing it as a concern for her retirement planning. "Mom, your spending patterns are becoming erratic," I started, keeping my voice low and concerned. "I noticed these large payments to that foundation. Are you being scammed?" Patricia's face, usually composed, tightened instantly. Her veneer cracked. "That is absolutely none of your business, Julian. They are family matters, highly sensitive, and relate to my estate planning." She didn't deny the payments. She defended their secrecy with ferocity. I pressed her, gently, mentioning the specific amounts and the timing. "It just seems odd, the timing coincides exactly with when Leo came to live with us. Is this related to Leo's mother, Sarah?" The mention of Sarah, the fictional sister, made Patricia flinch. She leaned in, her eyes cold. "You will stop this line of questioning immediately, Julian. You are married to my daughter. Your only responsibility is to be a good husband and a loving uncle to that boy. Focus on that. Some things are best left buried. Do you understand?" Her threat was veiled but palpable. She wasn't an innocent enabler, she was the architect of the lie, the financial muscle ensuring it never saw the light of day. Her insistence that I focus only on being a loving uncle crystallized my deepest fear. Leo was not a nephew. Leo was the anchor holding a decade-long ship of lies together, and Patricia was the captain of the cover-up. I left the lunch knowing one thing for certain: I had to get a DNA test. The cost of knowing the truth was now infinitely less than the cost of continuing the elaborate fantasy. The puzzle pieces started fitting together with brutal clarity. The quarterly payments Patricia was making corresponded not just to Leo's arrival, but to an entirely separate, specialized expense: advanced therapy and specialized care, perhaps for a hidden disability or specific educational needs not covered by the private school I paid for. Then, I remembered a conversation I had overheard years ago between Clara and her mother, referencing a specific genetic marker. They had looked terrified when they realized I was nearby. I dismissed it then, but now, it screamed evidence. I looked at Leo, a charming, intelligent boy of 15, and felt a profound ache. He carried the smile of my wife, but his eyes, the set of his jaw, the shape of his ears, they didn't belong to me, or to Clara's side of the family. They belonged to a vague, half-forgotten ghost from Clara's past. A former colleague named Marcus, a man she worked closely with for 6 months, just before she suddenly quit her high-flying job, citing stress, exactly 10 years ago. Marcus, who had suddenly relocated to Europe without a trace. I sat down, clutching the printed bank statements, realizing that the payments weren't just about secrecy, they were about the consequences of an affair, carefully hidden and financially managed by the maternal side of the family. The love I felt for Leo was real, but the relationship I had with Clara was entirely fraudulent. This brought me to the precipice of a terrible decision. Do I continue living this peaceful, loving lie to protect the boy I consider my son, knowing the betrayal will always simmer beneath the surface? Or do I rip the whole facade down by getting the DNA test, risking everything, just to possess the absolute, undeniable truth? If you were in my shoes, at what point would the need for the absolute truth outweigh the desire for continued peace? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. The decision was made. Peace was already an illusion, I just hadn't recognized the wires and rigging holding the scenery up. I became tactical. I couldn't ask Clara, as she would incinerate the evidence and gaslight me into oblivion. I had to approach Leo covertly. It felt disgusting, spying on a boy I loved, but this wasn't about catching him, it was about confirming his biological identity. I waited until Leo was at a sleepover. Clara was out running errands. I went into his bathroom. Everything was meticulously organized by Clara, even his used dental floss. I found a few strands of hair on his pillow after changing his sheets, handled them with gloved hands, and sealed them in a sterile plastic bag. The process of mailing the DNA sample was clinical and terrifyingly efficient. The lab promised results in 5 business days. Those 5 days felt like 5 years. I continued our life, kissing Clara good morning, asking Leo about his school, all while carrying this toxic secret inside me, pretending to be the trusting husband who worried only about mortgage rates and dinner plans. Every glance Clara gave me, every time she spoke about how much she loved our family, felt like a fresh cut. I watched her, trying to find the tell in her expression, the slightest tremor that would betray the decade of lies, but she was flawless. Patricia had clearly trained her well. I realized that the hardest part of being betrayed isn't the betrayal itself, it's the sickening realization that the person you thought you knew never actually existed. The email arrived at 11:03 a.m. on the 5th day. I was sitting at my desk, pretending to read a brief, when the subject line flashed, Genetic Relationship Report, Final Results. My hand trembled so violently I had to use both hands to click the mouse. I didn't need to scroll down, the headline, stark and damning, was enough. Result, exclusion of paternity, test subject 1 and test subject 2. Then, below it, the secondary test I had requested, comparing Leo's DNA to Clara's. Result, 99.99% probability of maternal relationship, mother/son. The air left my lungs in a rush. It wasn't just an affair, it wasn't just a hidden child. It was the complete, utter fabrication of our entire shared life. Leo was not a nephew, he was Clara's son, meaning that Sister Sarah was completely fictional, a prop for the betrayal. The decade-long secret wasn't a mistake, it was a sustained, calculated campaign of deceit involving Clara and her mother. My mind immediately flashed back to Marcus, the ex-colleague. I didn't need another DNA test to confirm the biological father, but I needed to know why she chose this specific, cruel path. Why invent an incapacitated sister? Why not simply claim the child was mine and hope I never asked questions? The answer lay in the financial structure, the payments, the foundation, Patricia's desperate fear. I realized Clara hadn't just been unfaithful, she had committed a social and emotional forgery, hiding the child not just from me, but from the stigma of an unwed mother, using her mother's wealth to ensure the truth remained buried. I searched Clara's old storage boxes, things she hadn't looked at since the move 10 years ago, searching for any connection to Marcus. I found a small, locked diary tucked beneath old photo albums. The lock was cheap, easily picked with a paperclip. Inside, the first few pages detailed the passion and excitement of her brief, intense affair with Marcus. But the later entries, written right around Leo's birth, revealed the true horror and complexity of the situation. Marcus hadn't abandoned her, he had been married, with a very powerful, highly connected family. He insisted on silence, offering a substantial yearly payment, the exact quarterly sum Patricia was funneling through the foundation, to ensure Clara never publicly named him as the father. If Clara had simply claimed the child was hers, Marcus's wife would have ensured Clara's professional and social ruin. Patricia, terrified for her daughter's reputation and securing the substantial payments for Leo's future, orchestrated the Sister Sarah story. She guaranteed Clara that the money would be kept separate, safe, and that I, Julian, the loving, trusting husband, would provide the stable home for the child. Clara willingly agreed to this emotional trade, my unconditional love for the security and secrecy offered by Marcus and her mother. The betrayal was no longer just about sex, it was about the cold, calculating commodification of my trust, my home, and my willingness to be a father. The final confrontation took place in our kitchen, ironically the place where we planned our future, where we first talked about having children. I didn't yell. My voice was dangerously calm, which seemed to terrify Clara more than any rage. I placed 3 items on the counter, the bank statements showing Patricia's transfers, the diary open to the page detailing Marcus's offer, and the DNA report. I know everything, Clara. Every transfer, every lie about Sarah, every payment your mother collected to ensure I played the role of the loving uncle to your son. She looked at the documents, her face draining of color, then she collapsed onto a chair, the tears finally coming, not of remorse, but of total defeat. She confessed everything, confirming Marcus's identity and her mother's involvement. It was the only way, Julian. We couldn't lose the money. And if I had told you the truth, I knew you would leave, and Leo would have had nothing. Her justification was the final, twisting knife. She hadn't lied to save me pain, she lied to secure her financial and social position, using me as the stable housing unit for the collateral damage of her affair. I looked at the woman who had expertly compartmentalized her life for 10 years and felt nothing but cold emptiness. The life we built was merely a beautifully decorated stage set, and I was just a supporting actor who never learned the full script. The marriage ended that night, not with a bang, but with the chilling finality of a closing door. Clara pleaded, Patricia called, threatening me with legal action, but I was immovable. The betrayal was too absolute, too sustained, to forgive. The most complex part was Leo. I sat him down and, without revealing the crushing details of the DNA, I simply explained that Clara and I needed to separate. I looked at the boy I had loved as my own for a decade, and I told him that none of the adult problems had anything to do with him, and that my love for him was unconditional. He is still Clara's son, and now, legally, entirely her responsibility. I moved out, taking only what was mine, leaving the house, the staged life, to Clara and the consequences of her decade-long secret. Healing won't be fast, the emotional scar of realizing my entire adult life was based on a calculated deception runs too deep. But I found strength in reclaiming my autonomy, in refusing to live another day as the unwitting caretaker of another man's child, managed by a mother-in-law who valued secrecy over integrity. The truth hurt, yes, but living the lie was slowly killing me. I am now rebuilding, one difficult day at a time, finding peace in the quiet authenticity of my solitude. Thanks everyone for watching. If you liked this, please subscribe to the channel Femme Fatale Files, leave a like, and write in the comments which country you are from. Stay tuned, there will be a new story tomorrow.